what she's trying to say. Just don't fluff it. Answer what you think.
And through working together,
it's a different thing. A peace through deterrence is one thing. A pre-commitment to take part in an active live firing war is a different thing. Is that what you're asking the government to do?
Yes.
Well, Sarah, I think I've been pretty clear. I mean,
no, you haven't. Oh my God.
Incredibly important. That does.
Anthony Albanese's big day in Beijing. Face to face once again with one of the world's most powerful and consequential leaders.
Prime Minister Albanese, welcome to China again.
So this was one of the things we're looking at just the other day, where Albo has actually gone to China to basically talk all things trade and our relationship with China. And yeah, I guess my whole stance behind it still is that he is actually prioritizing some conversations over what is going on with Trump, and obviously how much Trump has actually shooken up the relationship with China, the AUKUS, pharmaceuticals being on the tariffs list possibly, and all of that. So yeah, I think this is probably going to be one of the most productive visits early on in Albanese's new term. So, yeah.
And congratulations again on your re-election.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is my 8th visit to China, but my 2nd as Prime Minister, and I appreciate very much your hospitality.
It's quite understandable that he wants to bed down relations with China. It's also understandable up to a point that he's meeting Mr. Xi again before he's met Mr. Trump, because Mr. Trump cancelled on him. And it's not just like he's slipping in and out of Beijing. He's doing 3 Chinese cities over 6 days. So that's a statement beyond just the stabilisation of relations.
President Xi and the Prime Minister seemingly on a unity ticket, aware they have Washington's attention, demonstrating how strategic competitors and trade partners can work together.
With joint efforts from both sides, the China-Australia relationship has rose from the setback and turned around, bringing tangible benefits to the Chinese and Australian peoples.
That approach has indeed produced very positive benefits for both Australia and for China. Trade is now flowing freely to the benefit of both countries and to people and businesses on both sides.
10 years ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said that the US was a predictable power, China an unpredictable power. Now it's the complete opposite. China is a predictable power, and frankly not in good ways, many good ways for Australia. The US is unpredictable. Trump makes a fetish of it.
Yep, exactly. And that's sort of what sort of led to a lot of the confusion around this whole visit is, we have to focus on the relationships that we have with partners that are actually stable. The US at the moment is so stable with the way that Trump is acting. Our relationship with China has a huge impact on our economy, and so does the US, but the US is being super unstable, whereas China is being stable, more predictable, which means that you can forecast, how markets are going to act in the future and how trade is going to act in the future. And so, of course, you're going to align better with those kind of countries, just based on that.
And that means in both our relations with our biggest economic partner and our biggest security partner, we're going to have a higher tolerance for conflict because we're going to have problems with both of them.
The Chinese president is well aware that America is watching closely as the pressure has ramped up on traditional alliances.
The Chinese side is ready to work with the Australian side to push the bilateral relationship further, no matter.
And this is what I was sort of saying last week was, we're in Australia's in a very, very weird spot where we have such good relationships with China and with AUKUS, with the US, and AUKUS plays such a big deal on that because Trump is now saying that, not just Trump, but the US is basically just saying that they want to have access to any submarines if there's any threat in the Indo-Pacific region, which China is a part of. So yeah, it's going to be, I think China is going to be smart here and actually play a good hand with Albo, and hopefully Albo capitalizes on that too.
How the international landscape may evolve, we should uphold this overall direction unswervingly.
Speaking after his tête-à-tête, the Prime Minister indicated he'd sought assurances that Beijing would better inform Australia about future Chinese Navy activity. A small win for the PM on a touchy military flashpoint, but not one the opposition is likely to give him much credit for. Susan Lee insists the PM should have prioritised Donald Trump over Xi Jinping.
The problem here is that there hasn't been a meeting between Prime Minister Albanese and President Trump. There's a growing list of issues.
This is exactly what I was just saying before. And the opposition is going to come out and say that they want Albanese to create a better relationship with Trump instead of Xi Jinping. But the reality is that Trump is being completely erratic, and China is actually coming to the table and setting up, structured, conversations with Albanese regarding trade and defense and stuff like that. So. Of course, she's going to say probably should have prioritized meeting with Trump, but he went over there, he was there, but Trump decided to leave based on things in Iran and didn't make a follow up. So I think this is a pretty poor standing point.
Issues in the relationship, but that meeting has not taken place. It is urgent, it is important, and it matters to Australia's peace and security.
But the Prime Minister appears to be putting into practice a version of foreign and trade policy that he believes puts Australia first, regardless of what powerful allies might think.
I think, Mr. Albanese is making it clear that he's going to do it this way. He's not putting relations on China on hold just to cultivate a good atmosphere with Mr. Trump.
Wonderful to be here, Mr. President.
Good.
And 7:30's political editor, Jacob Grieber, joins me now. Jacob, lots of ceremonies, some pomp on display, even a lunch. How does all of this play here in the US? How does it play?
A very consequential meeting and day indeed, Sarah, for our Prime Minister. He's on that stage. He's incredibly visible. As you just mentioned, there's the formal, carefully stage-managed interaction between the two. And then after that, they had a lunch with the First Lady, Xi Jinping, that's Peng Liyuan, I hope I've said that right, I probably haven't, and of course Jodie Hayden, the Prime Minister's fiancée. That's an indication of how this is gone to a more intimate level. That is a very significant thing. It does tell you that both sides are not shying away from that level of interaction. Underlying it, of course, Xi Jinping talking about sharing common ground while sharing differences. That is a sentiment the Prime Minister endorsed. So that does mean you can have tough conversations. It's not really clear whether China or whether Xi Jinping gave the Prime Minister what he was looking for on this issue of the Navy in the Southern Ocean. And likewise, the Prime Minister appears not to have been pressed on the Port of Darwin issue. So those are those difficult things that are sitting underneath what is a much more heavily emphasised economic relationship.
So that's obviously there's going to be a lot.
Yeah, so what he's touching on there is, there is a big thing going on in for the Port of Darwin where, China was going to be leasing one of the ports there. They're going to be leasing one of the ports there, but then Australia's basically turned around and said no, they're not going to be that they're going to be taking it back. That Port of Darwin thing is quite a big thing for China, but then it's going to have, that the US has basically defense ties in with Australia, and they have bases, and then if China ends up setting up some of their bases or having access to that port, which they claim to just going to be using for trade, it kind of doesn't make the US feel very settled when it comes to that. So that's going to be a huge sort of talking point between Albo and Xi Jinping, I assume.
To talk about over the next few days in terms of economics, in terms of trade. I know that the government sent out Penny Wong last week at ASEAN to talk about the threatening build-up of the Chinese military, but Albanese is all about trade. What actually should we expect next? I should say his expressions today were principally about trade. What do we expect for the rest of the trip?
After another banquet, he'll need to go for a long walk and work some of that off. He goes to Chengdu, which is a major industrial city in China's west. And the key point about that part of the visit is this is where Chinese industrial policy, really on steroids, is on full display. And China would love to further integrate Australia into that. Now, that brings us very directly into an economic challenge with the United States, which has also sought to deepen the trade links, the critical mineral links, all those things that are part of the Western economy, to separate China out from that. And that is going to be the challenge for the Prime Minister going forward. And of course, it comes on top, Sarah, of this growing pressure out of Washington for Australia to be more assertive about its defence posture. Taiwan, of course, sits underneath all of that. The Americans want us to spend more money on defence.
Yeah, that's a really big thing that's going on at the moment too. Is the whole, Pete Hegseth said that he wants Australia to be spending, what was it, like 3.5% of GDP on defence, and then Albo's basically come back and said, no, we're not going to be spending any more. We have our defence strategy, and we are adequately putting aside money in our budget for defence that's going to adequately support our defence strategic review, which is, that's what they're going ahead with. That's what we've been told to do, and that's what we're going to do. And they're not going to let any other government basically bully them or pressure them into spending more when they don't believe it is necessary. And I think, personally, I think that's absolutely fine.
And that's something China will have told, or presumably have urged the Prime Minister not to do.
All right, Jacob, we'll check in with you as the trip goes on. Thank you very much indeed. Now, while Australia manages its very careful diplomacy with China, as we saw there, the opposition wants stronger commitments from the government to the US military in the region. Shadow Defence Minister Angus Taylor joined me a bit earlier. Angus Taylor, welcome to 7:30.
Good to be with you, Sarah.
Here we go.
Now,
Angus
Xi Jinping
Taylor
today urged the Prime Minister to maintain the renewed Australia-China relationship. He said, no matter how the landscape may evolve, that's clearly a reference to the US. Is there an opportunity for Australia here to exploit the chaos created by the America First trade policies?
Well, Sarah, trade's important to this country, always has been, and will continue to be. And that means we should have strong trade relationships with China, with the United States, with other trading nations around the world. It's always been important to our prosperity as a nation, and it will continue to be. So I strongly encourage the Prime Minister on this. We should continue to pursue those trade relationships, but we should be pursuing them across the board, including with the United States, and that means fighting hard to avoid having tariffs imposed on our exports.
Xi Jinping also invited the Prime Minister for lunch today, as well as the meeting. Is that a plus for Australia?
Well, I think we should be doing everything we can to build relationships like this around the world, but that means also building the relationship with the new American administration, the new US administration.
See, they've got to stop banging on about the US. Like, it's, this is exactly what happens. They do such a, that they go in and they have the meetings that they need to with China, with Xi Jinping, and everything is structured, everything is nice. They go through, like 6 cities, bang, 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 and then the opposition come back and they're always just like, oh no, you're meant to be tightening it up with US, meant to be doing this with the US. But yet the US are just so flaky that they're so unstable towards Australia, and they keep imposing, these tariffs. They're threatening other sort of like, rhetoric around like defense spending, and all this, and around like AUKUS, and yet they can't even get a conversation with them. It's like it's just ridiculous. Like, why aren't you looking at the deal with China at the moment as a win? And if anything, depending on how good that those conversations go, that would almost persuade the US to actually come and talk with Australia if we're really that important.
And that's got to be a priority for the Prime Minister alongside trade relationships like the one we have with China, Sarah.
But you're not suggesting that the Prime Minister shouldn't have gone to meet Xi Jinping, are you?
No, not at all. But I would suggest that after over 250 days of this new US administration, we should have seen a face-to-face meeting between the Prime Minister and the President of the United States, and we should be seeing relationship building and work going on with the United States around the AUKUS alliance, around our strategic alliance more broadly, and that's incredible.
I would like him to say whether he thinks that is because it is of the government's, it is the government's fault that we haven't met Trump yet, or if he thinks it's due to the US and how unstable they are at the moment. I'd be really, really interested to actually know what he sides with, because from my perspective and what I understand, Albanese did go over there and they did look at going to the NATO summit too, and Trump did not go to either of them. So I don't know what else they expect him to do, and if Albanese were to cancel other trips in order to go see Trump, how would that play out in say China's eyes if we were to do that? They don't ever sort of talk about that.
Incredibly important, and what the Prime Minister himself has said is the most uncertain and dangerous time since the Second World War.
Now, just a couple of things on that point. Obviously, work is going on behind the scenes. The last meeting was cancelled by Trump, but he also cancelled on South Korea and India. But let me put the question to you like this. Of course, meetings are important, but isn't there also an argument for dealing with Donald Trump at arm's length? If you look what's happened to the Japanese, another close ally, he met their Prime Minister earlier this year. Now relations with the Japanese are at their worst point in decades.
Exactly.
Look, Sarah, I think you can always build relationships over time. It's challenging. Look, our relationship with the United States is very long-standing, is very deep. We've fought with them in every war since Federation, and we should be working closely with them to make sure that we have peace through deterrence and strength in our region. We should have a joint commitment with them to the security of Taiwan and peace in the Taiwan Strait. These are incredibly important things to be focusing on right now, and it's why AUKUS is so important. And it's why the very clear messaging coming out of the United States that this has got to be a priority for us as a centrepiece of our alliance.
Wait, but it is. The US are reviewing the AUKUS review. I don't know what else they what he expects us to do, you know what I mean?
Prime Minister would like to say that alliances like this override sovereignty. They don't. They underpin sovereignty. You achieve sovereignty with good alliances, Sarah, and this is what we need to.
I'm not saying we shouldn't be having it shouldn't be a priority, because it definitely should be a priority. A lot of our defense is tied up with the US, so of course there's a huge incentive for prioritizing any sort of meetings with the US, but at the end of the day, you got to meet halfway. I don't know what they expect in terms of how much effort you're meant to put in with getting nothing out of it. Like I said before, Albanese went there. Why couldn't he?
Let's be clear about this, because
reschedule.
it's very important. Would the coalition be prepared to give Donald Trump a guarantee that Australia would join the US in a war over Taiwan?
Oh.
Well, we need to have a joint commitment with the United States, regardless of who the president is, about peace in our region, and that means the security of Taiwan and peace through strength and deterrence in the Taiwan Strait. This has to be a priority. Now, does that mean you can codify your response in every possible scenario? Well, of course not, and no country can, but you can commit to those core principles that I've described, and this is exactly what the Prime Minister and the government should be doing. It's what I'm sure America is looking for, some indication that we do have that commitment to peace through deterrence.
To be clear, Angus Taylor, are you saying that the government should give a pre-commitment to the United States that Australia would take part in a war over Taiwan?
Well, Sarah, I think I've been pretty clear in saying
no,
you can't codify for every possible scenario, but you can make principled commitments to the security of Taiwan, to peace through deterrence and capability in the Taiwan Strait.
What you want to say. Do you want Australia to go to war with the US if they decide that they are going to war with China? Okay, because if they got subs and then they give their subs to us and then all of a sudden they want to use them, do we give them the subs to basically take on China? That's what she's trying to say. Just don't fluff it. Answer what you think.
And through working together,
it's a different thing. A peace through deterrence is one thing. A pre-commitment to take part in an active live firing war is a different thing. Is that what you're asking the government to do?
Yes.
Well, Sarah, I think I've been pretty clear. I mean,
no,
peace through
you haven't. Oh my God.
Is incredibly important. That does mean you're prepared to act under certain circumstances. You can't codify all the scenarios as to how a conflict might unfold. It's not possible to do that.
You haven't even gotten to the conflict yet.
The Americans won't do that, and nor can we. But you can make those principled commitments as part of an alliance. And what's lacking right now is a commitment from this government to an alliance which has underpinned our security for many, many decades, which does require strength, and where the objective is peace, not war. The exact opposite. We don't want conflict. That's the whole point here. But you can avoid conflict by working together with strength and clarity and credibility, and that's what we need to see from the government.
Would that
No, that's... Oh my God, I'm pretty sure... Where did I read it? I'm pretty sure that the US Oh, wait, let me find this. Didn't the US, will the US scrap AUKUS if they can't use Australian subs against China? Where did we read that? Because wasn't there pressure from where was this? Okay, let's. I don't know how far to. Speculation is swirling around the future of the $368 billion AUKUS agreement. Following which is to review, ensure it meets. America first. America first agenda. Okay, that's the key. Prime Minister Albanese was planning to use talks at a G7 to demand the US continue to back the deal. Yeah, we have 5 experts where the government should rethink. Absolutely not. Another review would consume time. Yeah, don't understand why we must put this in context. The leaked details of the US DoD review does not alter the position of any of the 3 AUKUS partners. Much of this commentary has missed the broader picture. Okay, so I still stand by this. I think that the US undertaking a review is pretty normal, and with Trump has an American first policy, and basically Biden was the start of this deal. So of course, anything with Biden initiated, Trump is automatically going to go through it. Okay, has nothing to do with Australia. Normally conducted every 4 years. PX already announced the 2020 revision will be brought forward to 2025 with the Undersecretary blah 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 blah. Yep, Elbridge Colby leading the process. So Colby is, he's a Trump suck too, so this will be fun. It makes sense that the Pentagon would assess AUKUS a central element of the independent posture. While some have fixated on supposed skepticism, the reality is different. Colby told the US Senate should do everything in its power to make AUKUS work. Okay? Why now? Because the strategy review is being accelerated under the new administration. As for the leak, it's plausible it was designed to apply pressure to Australia over its defence spending. So they're using AUKUS to basically try and get Australia to increase its defence spending too. Because if Australia increases its defence spending, then they can basically help get more funding into AUKUS, and AUKUS is a part of AUKUS is Australia is going to help the US, build the subs as well, and then there's going to be more money flowing towards the US through that funnel too. The more important question is, what is likely to be the outcome? Well, nothing's certain. AUKUS enjoys a strong bipartisan support with the US, as it does with Australia. There's a blueprint of cooperation. Yep. Crucially, the real driver is this so-called America First review. The answer is quite a lot. It secures the South beyond range of most Chinese missiles and delivers satellites. Yep. Expanded marine, the bomber, posture initiatives. Okay. Remain unclear. Alarm is. Okay, I want to get to. Since AUKUS already contains clause, you could use to cancel the pact. Termination now would benefit Australia. Okay, yep. Giving away America's crown jewels. Okay, Elbridge Colby has previously questioned the logic of giving away America's crown jewels, namely its nuclear-powered submarines, and argued the US would need all its boats against China. Okay, so the narrative there is saying, why would America give away its nuclear-powered submarines if they need all their boats against China? Okay, so they're already concerned there that they're going to need everything that they've got. More alarmingly, in his book, The Strategy of Denial, Colby concludes the idea the way. Okay, so Colby again, Trump sucked, so he's going to be 100% for this like America First sort of Alignment. Where is it? Big fixture should adopt the philosophy of strategic defense. This method of waging war. This will eliminate the risk of enormous scrutiny. Yep. Well, it will be ironic and save itself. AUKUS remains. The experts would be a strategic mistake. Come on. I feel like I can't even remember what it was. It's going to be really annoying now. Support US in maybe it's that one. No, okay. Can't find it. But I feel like I read something where, you can't connect the dots anyway, but basically if they were to go to war, if there was something to kick off in the Indo-Pacific, China invades Taiwan, and then US got involved, and then there was adequate threat, the US will want to be able to use those subs for US purposes and US strategic defense strategies. And they want Australia to basically agree that they will let them use that. And this is kind of what it's getting at.
Include a pre-commitment to commit either the AUKUS subs or Virginia-class subs when and if they're delivered to Australia. Would that be included in what you're asking for?
Well, what I am saying is there needs to be a commitment, a joint commitment between the United States and Australia to peace through deterrence and strength, and that means working together very closely.
Oh God, he's not going to fucking answer
to the security of Taiwan, and that commitment should underpin what we are doing in AUKUS.
This is what's really annoying is people want the Liberals to basically grow some balls and someone to stand up and say, yes, we're going to support them. Like they want to know, instead of all this sort of slurping around, we want this peace agreement, got to have these conversations. Just someone just answer and just say, yeah, if they want our subs for the conflict, then we're probably going to support them. Like if you want to be in opposition to what Albanese is doing, then just say that. Like I think people appreciate it more, and this is so
our purchase
ridiculous.
Of Virginia-class submarines, and it should underpin an increase in our defence spending to at least 3%, and the investments that go alongside that, the investment in joint facilities.
It's such a
here,
passive
in
take
Australia,
on it.
In the north, at Tyndall, at Darwin, Townsville, and the new submarine bases, as well as the upgrades in Osborne and Henderson. All of this has to be part of that package. Now, I don't see any evidence that the government is making progress on that package, and that
everything that he's saying that he wants the government to do is basically just get on your knees and just suck off whatever they say. Because really, the US has come back and said that they want 3.5% GDP spending. The US is saying that they're going to revisit the AUKUS deal, and the US are probably going to turn around and say, if we go to conflict in the Indo-Pacific, we want to be able to use your subs. In none of that is our government going, hey, we want these deals. We want to have like this sort of protection or anything like that. We're not actually leading any conversations. What this guy wants is to basically just bend over and just let everything that the US wants, to go through. And that is just not an Australian first policy. And it's not a very good strategy in itself. Okay, you can have relationships and you can have alliances, but doesn't mean that it always has to be one way, which is what this guy is trying to
underpinning
say.
Set of principles to our alliance.
So if I can refer to the reporting that came out of the United States recently, which refers to a series of meetings between defence officials in the US and defence officials in Australia, where that question was asked about a pre-commitment to joining America.
This is what I was
in the war
talking about
over
before.
Taiwan. You think the answer to that question should be yes?
Well, I think I've already answered that
No,
question.
you haven't.
We can't codify every
Holy
scenario,
crap.
but we can commit.
It's not every scenario. It's one scenario.
Of Taiwan, which
Okay,
is so crucial.
one scenario. The US are in conflict with China in the Indo-Pacific region, and the US come to you and say, hey, we are at war now, give us your subs. Do you think that we should sign an agreement now or have something in place that says yes? That's the question. That's the scenario. Oh my God, how do you not freaking understand that?
To the Indo-Pacific, to making sure that Taiwan Strait remains a place of peace. And we're only going to achieve that by making sure that we have the strength jointly and the credibility to ensure and underpin that peace. So look, these are the commitments that need to be made, Sarah, and they are not being made as far as we can see. If they're being made,
She's
they're very
asking
quietly
you,
behind closed
what
doors.
commitment
And frankly,
would
we're not
you
getting
make?
the transparency we need.
What commitment would you make as the opposition? Okay, how would you do it better? Just answer it.
Why should Australia make a pre-commitment of that nature when the United States retains some ambiguity over its position?
That's exactly what I just said before. Like, why do you prefer that we bend over to the US and do all these sort of things instead of, maybe coming to the table with our own and have some sort of bargaining? Jesus.
Vis-a-vis Taiwan.
What I am saying we should commit to is the joint commitment to the security of Taiwan, to peace in the Taiwan Strait. And I'll say it again. I mean, and they are absolutely underpinning commitments to make sure that we have broader peace in the Indo-Pacific, to make sure we have the appropriate power balance in our part of the world, and to ensure that we continue to achieve into the future what we have been able to achieve since the Second World War. Now, we're facing the most dangerous environment since the Second World War. And if we think that we can actually get the right equilibrium and right balance without investment in defence, without alliances, then we're kidding ourselves. And that's why it's so important we make these investments at this time.
Angus Taylor, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Good afternoon. It is very good to be back in Beijing for my second visit as Prime Minister. And this morning we had a very constructive meeting with President Xi in which we spoke about the range of issues facing our relationship with China. Here and always, I'm guided by Australia's national interests. My government's approach to our relationship with China is patient, is calibrated and is deliberate. And it is aimed at cooperating wherever we can, disagreeing where we must, but engaging in our national interest. Given that 1 in 4 of Australian jobs depends upon trade, and given that China is overwhelmingly, by far, the largest trading partner that Australia has, it is very much in the interest of Australian jobs and the Australian economy to have a positive and constructive relationship with China. Dialogue is how we advance our interests, how we manage our differences, and we guard against misunderstanding. And the purpose of my visit here is to advance Australia's interests. President Xi and I agreed that dialogue must be at the centre of our relationship. We also discussed our economic relationship, which is critical to Australia. We spoke about the potential for new engagement in areas such as decarbonisation. That was the subject of the forum that was held yesterday. This afternoon, after this, we'll travel back to the centre of Beijing for meetings with Chairman Zhao of the National People's Congress for the annual leaders meeting with Premier Li. We'll then have a signing of various MOUs, and then we will have the CEO roundtable. The fact that senior Australian business people, led by the Business Council of Australia, have come here to Beijing, as well as the President in Shanghai, and indeed Australian businesses will also be engaged with us in Chengdu, shows how important the economic relationship is and how the Australian business community regard this as an important relationship. We will then have, later this evening, a banquet hosted by Premier Li, but I thank very much President Xi, not just for the bilateral meeting that we're able to have, but also hosting.
I actually wonder, and when was this? Yeah, okay.
Banquet lunch there in the Great Hall of the Peoples, which is an honour which is bestowed on Australia. Whoa.
On the security side, did you seek assurances that Australia would be better informed in future about the PLA's navy in Australian waters, and has China asserted its right to free navigation in those waters?
Yes, to the former, and secondly, in response, of course, it was President Xi said that China engaged in exercises just as Australia engages in exercises.
Yeah, okay, but I think there's a little you're missing there that's embedded in that question. It's probably, do we actually have a full understanding of why they did those exercises and why they didn't tell us? Is probably what we want to know, but you know.
Yeah, we'll go around.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Can I just clarify on that answer that you specifically sought that the notification was really the issue that Australia had had earlier in the year? And could I also ask if discussions were had around the case of jailed Australian Dr. Young Heng Jun?
On the latter, yes. And on the former
yeah,
issue,
but what?
I said what I said at the time, which was that it was within international law. There was no breach of international law by China, but that we were concerned about the notice and
They're
the
just
way
letting off
it happened, including the live-fire exercises.
You've spoken a lot about the importance of increasing dialogue, building engagement between businesses. What tangible outcomes are you looking for example, with the free trade agreement from these talks?
Well, you'll see some outcomes this afternoon. I will travel back immediately after this for the leaders' meeting with Premier Lee. But already what you've seen is a range of business-to-business relationships, if you like, coming forward. Some of those have been written about already. On the free trade agreement, one of the provisions, not unusually in the chapter, the Chinese-Australia Free Trade Agreement that was signed by the former.
I think this is what they're talking about. China's Premier Lee calls for more economic ties with Australia, meeting with Albanese. Okay, let's read this. So in short, China has called for greater economic collaboration with Australia amidst international economic uncertainty. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with China's Premier Li Qiang on Tuesday, where the Chinese leader took a veiled swipe at Trump's tariff policies. Albanese will travel to the Great Wall of China as former Prime Ministers Gough Whitlam and Malcolm Fraser did in the 70s. China's Premier has urged Australia to fight back against protectionism during its meetings with Albanese and Australian business leaders in Beijing, suggesting the two countries should draw closer together in the face of global economic uncertainty. Albanese and Mr. Lee sat down for annual leaders meeting on Tuesday evening, as well as hosting a roundtable meeting with high-powered group of Chinese and Australian business leaders. In a thinly veiled swipe at the Trump administration, chaotic Liberation Day tariffs, and its push to upend trading ties with key partners, China's second most senior leader emphasized the importance of maintaining open markets and predictability. He also suggested Australia and China should respond together in the face of growing instability and uncertainty in the global economy. The development of all countries is faced with new challenges, and given such circumstances, China and Australia as important trade partners should strengthen dialogue and cooperation, he said. The significance of us doing so is becoming more notable. In a joint statement issued after the meeting, the two countries also said they had agreed to continue to grow the bilateral relationship, enhance exchanges and cooperation in areas of shared interest, uphold their respective national interests, and navigate their differences wisely. You know, that's all kind of what we touched on, you know what I mean? Like, the Trump administration is coming off extremely unstable, and so China and Australia, being products of any sort of instability in the US economy, they're basically saying, hey, why don't we pick up the slack in terms of stability and basically try and secure each other such that, you know, our own economies don't sort of, you know, go to shit, which I think is fair enough. Grow together, and especially because the US are obviously dodging Australia. Maybe not, I wouldn't maybe say dodging Australia, but they're definitely pushing us to the side, and they're obviously, Trump, in short, doesn't really get along with China, given the trade wars. Grow together. The meeting came after Albanese met with China's President Xi Jinping, who used more veiled language to refer to the Trump administration, saying Australia and China should commit to equal treatment and cooperation, no matter how the international landscape may evolve. The Prime Minister and Premier also oversaw the signing of 6 agreements designed to encourage economic cooperation and business ties across the host of different areas, including tourism, agriculture, and renewable energy. Did China, China's investment into the lithium ion mines in Australia is significant, but has faced increased scrutiny and some restrictions in recent years? Because isn't there that, I can't remember, was it like recently, like this huge lithium mine that's to overtake? Sorry, I'm just thinking of, I just think that Albanese, because I know that they're going for the net zero. I know green energy is huge in this government's campaign. I wonder if this kind of renewable energy is going to be around batteries and solar and all that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting. But Mr. Lee's language in meetings with Albanese and business leaders left a little question that China had picked up on Australia's growing anxiety about the Trump administration assault on the international trading system. Yeah. Mr. Lee's comments also illustrate how China is trying to present itself as a champion of free trade and exploit resentments with Trump administration aggression approach. We hope that you will embrace openness and cooperation, no matter how the world changes, Mr. Lee told the gathered business chiefs. Okay. You should be promoters of economic trade cooperation so that our two countries will better draw each other's strengths and grow together. Earlier, Albanese told reporters that Mr. Xi did not directly raise his election promise to effectively force a Chinese company to give up the Port Darwin. So this Port Darwin, I think this is the one that we brought up earlier. Chinese-owned operators of the Port Darwin said they've fallen victim to a campaign of mis and mistruths, including the rumoured link to People's Liberation Army of it. 730 has been granted 6.3% was negative on the scenes to find a new operator for the port. Our Darwin's for the Australian boss of Battle Trains. Land bridge pushes back against has faced a decade from accusation as soon as it links to the PLA to warnings and influencing. So, okay, this is kind of touching on some other stuff. Landbridge Group, the company that holds a 99-year lease on the port. Anyways, basically, China had a lease to this port, and then Australia's taken it off them. I feel like what we've seen is port continues to be used as a political football in the election. Hasn't done himself any favors. Okay, yeah, this is a different thingo, but I think this one here is it. How did the deal go down? Where's that? So leverage was later promoted to the role. No. A couple of questions have been raised. How to read it on the wiki. this out. NT lobbied to invest millions in developing the rinky-dink Darwin Port. Yeah, so to invest millions in developing the Darwin Port that was only turning over a few $1 million annually in cattle, mining and gas interests. Successive governments believe that the port held the cure to Northern Territory's economic maladies. And then if it could be expanded and maintained, it would surely be a secret weapon. Resurgence and the rest of the nations. But for years, the federal government, do you see its potential? In 2012, Country Liberal Party, long viewed, was brought back to life. Okay. First was a poor expression of interest. 2014, Special Selection Committee. Yeah, the team included tourism. Fuck's sake! Why can't I find? Anyways. Commission has now wrapped up his high-level meetings in China and will travel to the Great Wall. He would like to emphasise Labour's role in restoring trading ties with the People's Republic of China. After that, yeah, Chengdu in the Manchurians. Okay. All right.
Government 10 years ago in 2015, following the comprehensive partnership that was signed also by the Abbott government, was there's a clause in there for a review. That will happen because the 10 years has clicked in, so we'll engage in that. Paul?
Prime Minister, your government's made clear its concern about China's unexplained military build-up. Did you seek clarity on China's strategic or military intent? And did you seek any clarity or did you gain any insight into China's plans for reunification with Taiwan?
I reaffirmed on Taiwan Australia's position of support for the status quo on the
military build-up and what its purpose is, what China's strategic and military aims are.
Well, you would be surprised if that was brought forward. I'm not sure what you're getting at or what you're suggesting might be have been raised. I'm not sure the context.
Well, your government's raised concerns about the military build-up and the lack of clarity around what it might be used for. Do you feel confident that China is a force for peace in the region after this meeting? Or do you
well, what we did was we put forward Australia's position, or I did, which is that we want peace and security in the region. That is in the interests of both Australia and in the interests of China.
Prime Minister, our security partner, the United States, regards China as its greatest military threat. I'd like you, if you could, to say how do you regard China in terms
here we
of
go.
this threat, and particularly, has your view on the security threat changed as a result of your sitting down with the President?
On the latter, no, it hasn't. We have strategic competition in the region, but we continue to engage in order to support peace and security in the region and stability in the region. And that's something that we advocate for. It's something I advocated for today.
Prime Minister did.
It's funny, like, I know there's sort of like waffle, like bollocks, and very, very vague, but it's the exact same thing that Angus Taylor was talking about before. They just want peace and sovereignty, and you've got to have those conversations. And then Albo just basically says, yeah, we went there and we had those conversations, and then yet the opposition come back and be like, no, you got to have those conversations. And then they come back and say, yeah, we've had those conversations, peace and sovereignty. It's like, no, we haven't had those peace and sovereign conversations yet. And it just goes back and forth like that.
The President,
and then I'll go here and then I'll come back.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Did the President express any objection to your plans about bringing the Port of Darwin back into Australian hands, or any potential response that China might take to that?
No, it wasn't raised.
Prime Minister. President Xi asked you to continue to improve the relationship, no matter what happened in the world. This seemed to be a reference to the United States. Did you make any sort of commitments in terms of the ongoing relationship with China in terms of the actions of the United States and what it may do?
I spoke about the relationship with China. That was the purpose of the visit.
That's,
and the purpose of...
They're really trying to... it just sounds like there are a lot of unanswered questions regarding the whole US relationship. But the problem is that the government has tried to talk to Trump on multiple occasions now, the US on multiple occasions, and they just haven't shown up. So I don't know why the stance would change, and nothing's going to progress if the conversations don't happen. But you can't just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, because at the end of the day, they're turning around and going to be putting tariffs on us. They're going to be turning around and making harsh clauses in the AUKUS deal possibly. And we're trying to move forward as a country and deepen our economic ties. We're trying to deepen our relationships with China, and we can't just stop moving as a country because the US basically don't want to come and have those conversations. So it's just. The meeting. It's difficult, but that's just how it is.
The fact is, we do live in an uncertain world, something that I've said a number of times.
And we want certainty.
During the recent election campaign, you might have noted that in various speeches, media conferences on a daily basis. So that is just a fact, that observation. But I was speaking about the relationship between Australia and China. And
do you know what this is? I just realised this, all right? Just had a full download. This is kind of like when people they're dating and you got to choose between two people. You're going to go with person number one, who is they have a full-time job, they've got a good salary, they've got good friends, they've got a supportive family. Basically every single week they kind of do the same thing, like they might go to the gym, they might hang out with friends, but they're always just consistently there. And when you want to talk to them, they're just consistently able to engage with you, and it's a good, safe feeling. And it's a way, like when you have those people in your life, or you have, like, when you're that person, you feel like you're progressing because you're continuously moving in a direction. And then you got person number two, who's like the fuckboy, or it's the the chick that the stereotypical kind of gold digger kind of chick, or whatever, like where you don't know where they are. They string you along, they breadcrumb you, they got red flags galore, and they're just so like you just have no way of predicting their behavior. And everyone always tells you, hey, don't go for that one, don't go for that one, don't go on. They're retarded. They're just going to let you down. They're just going to break your heart. All those sort of things. That's exactly what is happening here. We've got this certain relationship with China that's progressive, and we can, improve our economy by doing so. And we can look 10 years into the future and go, okay, if we head towards this path, these are sort of things we can achieve. And no one's even like, they're just looking at that and going, oh yeah, but what about Cassandra over here? Like, oh, have you heard from her anyway? Blah blah blah. And then they just keep asking about this other relationship, and then just holding that on a pedestal. It's just like, come on, like focus on the things that we can actually look at and be able to estimate. We're actually able to get some evidence towards. It's just funny.
You mentioned Dr. Yang was mentioned. Are you able to elaborate, and are we any closer to perhaps getting him out of jail and back home to Australia?
Well, I raised Dr. Young's case. You wouldn't expect there to be an immediate outcome. That's not the way these things work. The way it works is by that patient, calibrated advocacy. That is what Australians do. That's what my government does. And I point to my government's record when it comes to these issues. No, we're going around.
Hi, James from Bloomberg News. You mentioned dialogue, but on defence intercepts in the South China Sea, in the East China Sea, Australia has complained a number of times about Chinese actions, which have been Australia's said unsafe. Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan, other countries have also said the same thing. Do you think, or do you get an impression that there is going to be more dialogue on these kinds of things? There is going to be a change in how the PLA acts in the region, or are your queries on this falling on deaf ears?
Well, we raised the issue of Australia's interests and we raised it in specific contexts as well, that there have been these maritime incidents. And one of the things that we know is that dialogue is a good thing. When I spoke at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore as the lead keynote speaker a few years ago, I spoke about the need for, I think it was 2023, so 2 years ago, I spoke about the need for there to be military-to-military communication between the United States and China, which had broken down. And I spoke in that context as well about the relationship that was there for a long time between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, and that there was always communication. If you don't have communication, you can have misadventure and misinterpretation as well. It's a good thing. I spoke about that in Shangri-La Dialogue, and I've spoken about it ever since.
Prime Minister Lewis from Reuters. How has US President Donald Trump's trade policy, in particular as it relates to Australia, affected how Australia approaches its relationship to China?
Oh, look, our relationship with China is very separate from that. China's our major trading partner, the destination for more than 1 in 4 of our export dollars comes here. The trade with the United States is important, but it's less than 5%. What Australia is doing is engaging not just with China, but we engage as well with our partners around the world, and we increasingly want to see a diversification of our trade. Anna.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Supporters of Yang Hengjun in Australia, including Feng Chongyi, say that they think the approach that your government has taken has been too soft and too weak and has actually invited bullying from the CCP. I'd like your response to that. In the same vein, do you hold any concern?
All right. Who is this person? Yang Hengjun. Legally known as Yang Jun, is a Chinese-Australian writer and businessman who is imprisoned by Chinese authorities on spying charges. Oh, shit. Yang was born in China and worked for the Ministry of State Security there for 10 years. He then immigrated to Australia, became an Australian citizen, wrote spy novels and pro-democracy blog posts, and obtained a PhD in China studies. In 2017, he moved to the US as a visiting scholar at the Columbia University. He ran an online store for Chinese buyers from the US. In 2019, Yang flew to Zhengzhou to renew visas for his family and was arrested by the Chinese government. He faced one charge of espionage, but the basis of the charge was unknown. He was subsequently found guilty and handed a sentence of death with reprieve. Death and reprieve is a criminal punishment found in Chapter 5. People's Republic of China. The 2-year suspended sentence where the execution is only carried out if the convicted commits further crimes during in February 2024. Born 2021 trial. Caught in Beijing, charged with espionage, wearing a full protective suit, mask and goggles despite China. No unique community transition from his 4 months. Yang pleaded not guilty. Australian consular officials were barred from observing the trial despite a battle agreement supposed to ensure access to court hearings involving Australian citizens in China. On 31st of May, the Associated Press published Yang's account. I wonder how they got away with this. Of the one-day trial as circulated amongst his friends, in which he told supporters he had asked for the judge to reject the evidence of what he had said while being tortured by interrogators. Yang also said the judge refused his request to submit evidence and called witnesses in his defense, though he agreed to attach only 100 pages of defense material to Yang's case file. In January 2022, it was reported that Yang, who along with the Australian government continues to maintain his innocence, was suffering seriously deteriorating health. Observers considered it nevertheless unlikely that he would be released before his sentencing scheduled, as brought delays in 2022. The ABC reported on 23 that his family has written to Prime Minister Albanese to help save Yang. Following multiple suspensions and delays to his trial verdict, it was announced on 5th February that Yang was sentenced to death with a 2-year reprieve, which may allow Yang's death sentence to be commuted to life imprisonment if he maintains good behaviour in prison. The verdict sparked an international outcry, especially for the Australian government and Yang's family, who questioned the validity of the ruling. Interesting. Okay.
Concerns about the fact that Australian media often too weak and has actually invited bullying from the CCP. I'd like your response to that. In the same vein, do you hold any...
The trade with the United States is important, but we engage as well with our partners around the world, and we increasingly want to see a diversification of our trade. Anna.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Supporters of Yang Hengjun in Australia, including Feng Chongyi, say that they think the approach that your government has taken has been too soft and too weak and has actually invited bullying from the CCP. I'd like your response to that. In the same vein, do you hold any concerns about the fact that Australian media were encircled by local authorities earlier today, asked to delete our footage, and that the police were going to be called because we were reporting on this visit?
Well, on the issue, I'm certainly not going to comment on what the family of someone who is detained here or anyone else or anywhere else. That would be entirely inappropriate and insensitive. I understand the pressures that are on people when a loved one has been incarcerated. What we will do, though, is put forward our views in a diplomatic way in order to try to maximise an outcome. And I point towards the outcomes where Australians here in China, in Myanmar, in Vietnam, in Indonesia, the United States and the UK have all received outcomes that at the least could be called satisfactory because of my government's advocacy, and will continue to do that in order to achieve outcomes, and that is what our objective is. The media, of course, I'm here paying my respect to the media here. That's what I do. China has a different system, obviously, with the media, but certainly I'm here being accountable. I came straight here, and I'm going straight back. Now,
Prime Minister, thank you.
Just
briefly on the Pacific, did you discuss the Pacific with President Xi? Did you ask China for more clarity on its strategic objectives or urge it to work through the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat? And if you did, what was the President's response?
Well, I stated our position of peace and security in the Pacific and stated my position of our engagement in the Pacific.
Prime Minister, did Xi raise US pressure on Australia and other allies over the defence of Taiwan?
No. Well,
Prime Minister, you said that President Xi didn't raise the Port of Darwin and that you didn't use the opportunity meeting him to explain your
Pacific.
Prime Minister, did Xi raise US pressure on Australia and other allies over the defence of Taiwan?
No. Well,
Islands Forum Secretariat, and if you did, what was the President's response?
Well, I stated our position of my position.
Pressure on Australia and other
in the Pacific.
Prime Minister, did Xi raise US pressure on Australia and other allies over the defence of Taiwan?
No. Well,
Prime Minister, you said that President Xi didn't raise the Port of Darwin and you didn't use the opportunity meeting him to explain your policy on that.
I don't need to. No. I've had the same position for a decade since the Liberal government chose to provide an incentive to the Liberal federal government chose to give an incentive to the Northern Territory Liberal government to flog off an asset.
What concerns did Xi raise, Prime Minister, if any? Sorry to jump in. What?
None. It wasn't raised. I can't be clearer.
Were any issues raised by him?
I can't be clearer than to say the question I was asked was not raised.
But did he? Sorry. Did he raise complaints about Australia's foreign investment regime? Did that come up?
No.
President Xi said about the trajectory that we're on and that it shouldn't change regardless of the international landscape. It did appear to be a comment about Donald Trump. Did he make any direct comments about Donald Trump or the US trade tariffs in relation to, I guess, in conversations about trade?
Well, I, of course, asserted Australia's view, which was we stand for free and fair trade. We want to see an open trading system. President Xi did, as part of his remarks, of course, speak about the importance of international trade as well. Thanks very much.